as you were reading through the comments and all, right, what
Yeah.
were your own thoughts about what he said, what people were saying,
I think it was quite surprising, right? Because I never expected these worlds to sort of collide. I know people, tourists and everyone who always marvel at Singapore Airlines or Singapore, our airport and all. It comes from a very Singapore's airport is so beautiful. They spend so much money to make this place beautiful. And then Matt Walsh on the other side. Matt Walsh is quite a well-known conservative right-wing commentator, right, who's stoked a lot of controversy in recent years with his I think he has a column on the Daily Wire and like you mentioned that show What is a Woman, right?
Yeah, and the Daily Wire is the house by the media house by Ben Shapiro, right?
Yeah, very right-wing, very conservative, has a lot of conservative hosts and conservative programs on hand. So yeah, for those two worlds to suddenly overlap is like the kind of like lunar eclipse, right, where the sun suddenly got a moon in front, and then you're like, what the hell is going on? It's like the picture of Changi Jewel Airport appearing on the Matt Walsh video is one of the last things I would imagine appearing on my YouTube feed. Because I think I do subscribe to his channel just because I do try to subscribe to both what I think are left wing and also right wing, just to get a sense of what both sides are saying. So to suddenly see Singapore there, and talking when someone's just when it stems from just a tweet saying how Changi Jewel is very nice, because that's what everyone does, right? Everyone who goes to Jewel at Changi Airport says like, oh, it's like Jurassic Park, so beautiful.
You can imagine if
to equate it suddenly to like wow, our death penalty debate and things like that. Wow, they're just like it's just one of those like you're that guy at the party that everyone's having a good time. Then you suddenly, hey, what do you think on the death penalty? It's like what? That wasn't part of the discussion,
You can imagine if like Chris Hemsworth were to tweet something about Singapore Airport. Wow, STB would unveil him as like the next ambassador to bring Singapore to a new audience and all. Matt Walsh, I don't think STB is gonna go knocking on his doors, but
hey, you never know, man. You never know. He might be invited. He might be invited for a debate at some point.
Yeah. Hey, Singapore Tourism Board, like right wing in the US, very big blossoming sector. No.
Yeah.
That can be the new tourist segment, right? The new visitors to Singapore.
Right wing. They conduct those tours for right wing conservatives to go and observe the prisons and observe our draconian laws.
Speaker's corner and all, and like this is how we maintain. Man, it's STB. Another brilliant business idea.
Yeah, but how do you feel when you first heard or saw about this whole thing? Because I know, like you mentioned, I think you were very fascinated with the What is a Woman, at least the trailer. I don't know if you actually watched the show.
The trailer. I haven't watched it.
Neither have I, because it's behind the paywall and all. But as in I don't subscribe to the Daily Wire, so we can't watch it. But it still seems like he still seems like a very polarizing figure even to you. So what do you feel about it when you first saw this?
I mean, I saw it like the people commenting about Singapore. Well, to a certain extent, I will agree that the strict laws in Singapore does contribute to some aspect of Singapore being safe, lah.
Yeah.
But so when the comments like people saying, oh, I'm a Singaporean, or I've been in Singapore for 5 years, it's the best place to live in the world, and all that. I mean, I can understand why they would comment that, but at the same time, it then became one of those things that, it's just one aspect of Singapore that you are kind of using to explain why the airport is amazing, lah. And it's funny because for Matt Walsh, like you also, I try to listen to commentators from right wing, left wing, centrist, just to get an idea, lah. And what I found interesting about the What is a Woman documentary was that it dared to question something that even I don't have a full answer for, right? I haven't watched the documentary, but for this one, I felt it was, how you say, a little too cherry picky for me because okay, you look at Matt Walsh, right? If you just Google Matt Walsh gun, right? I mean, he posted something on his Facebook like 2016. That was the first time he got his own gun, and he's always been a big supporter of the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms, and all this. Which I mean, on one hand, he supports the draconian laws in Singapore, but what about the gun control law? So it feels like even if he came to Singapore, he would clash with a lot of the things in Singapore. So that's why I felt like, oh, okay, I mean, you got to also understand, like, safety in Singapore is definitely not having free roaming guns is a big contributor, right?
Yeah, correct. It's true.
So that's where then you see the YouTube comments, it's just echo chamber on echo chamber on echo chamber, and no one is talking to each other. They're just fighting like crazy nuts.
Or just praising him, right? It's like a
praising him.
Praising Singapore, praising him. But I guess the thing is, when you watch the YouTube video, I at least for me, I get a sense that his entire tweet and everything is born out more of a frustration of what the situation is on the ground in the US, right? Which I have heard from more than just him, listening to Joe Rogan ranting about why he had to move away from LA, or even like talking to, I think when he had Ben Shapiro on his show, that Ben Shapiro, I think, lives in Florida or something. He talks about how LA is terrible because, they allow homeless people to camp on the streets and but not even commentators are, right? Like, even, I think, mutual friends of people from the US that we have spoken to in recent years or recent months, they have also indicated that the situation on the ground in the US is seems to be getting worse in terms of like petty crime, in terms of feeling safe when just walking around the streets, in terms of like bringing your kids out and then not discovering syringes or a used condom or even like bullets or whatever on the ground, right? I've been hearing a lot of anecdotes that it's been getting a lot worse, especially in the big cities, right? So and it seems like there's nothing that anyone can really do to stop it now. For various reasons, whether it's a political situation or political deadlock. So I can sense that frustration that people have about America. Like, they love the civil liberties and the idea that you can move to a place and your destiny is in your own hands and everything. As an immigrant, right? They really enjoy it. But the day-to-day experience of living there can be quite scary and quite frustrating for people on the ground, right? So when you watch the video, I was thinking that it would be an 18-minute expose about like Singapore and all, but actually I felt it was more just about him complaining about how they can't do a lot of things. They can't do a lot of things right in America, So I wouldn't even say that he's praising Singapore as much as he's really merely just complaining about America and just using Singapore as a what's that term? The term where the straw man, right? Like, almost like a straw man argument for the whole thing, Do you see the video and what do you think of the video when you watched it?
His video.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing is that, like, a lot of these commentators, when you're speaking to the camera alone, they sound super confident, right? And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like, some of the opinions I share on this podcast also, if I was doing it in front of people who vehemently disagree with me, right, I might take a different tone, you know. I don't think I'm like some hardcore lawyer that, like, you push me in a corner, I'll fight back, No, man, like, this is a safe space, right? So the reason why I said it struck out to me for him is because in somewhere on some chatter online, I read about this recent debate he had with Joe Rogan when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. And as much as I don't listen to Joe Rogan as much as I did, I went to look up that clip and they were arguing about marriage, and gay marriage. So basically, Matt Walsh, his stance on gay marriage is that it shouldn't be allowed because marriage, the definition can't keep changing, and it's an erosion of society's values, and the point of getting married is to have kids. So just based on that argument, Joe Rogan was just asking some very logical questions, and what about parents? What about people who get married and don't want to have kids? And the way Matt Walsh responded, right, he totally did not seem as confident as he was or as he is on his own channel. Sometimes when I watch some of these commentators, like, I think their charisma and their eloquence kind of plays a part in convincing me, actually they have a point. So it was quite heartening to see that. And then
heartening to see him being he sees argument being tore down by Joe Rogan, is it?
No, not so much. I just the argument being that, okay, he's human also, okay. He also doesn't have like 100% conviction on anything, and I think anyone who has 100% conviction on anything probably I wouldn't trust that person also lah. You know, if you don't leave any room for doubt.
Yeah.
So seeing that, I was like, okay, this guy is human also lah. But going back to what you were saying about the context of America, right? I actually think that that's a good point, because the mass shootings and the violence in the US just in January alone, right, is fucking insane.
Yeah.
I just Googled mass shooting USA because I remember last week there was some stat, it's only like 3/4 through January and really there's X number of mass shootings and X number of people dead. Just this past Saturday, there was another mass shooting in California.
Yeah, that's right.
There were 3 dead and 4 injured. And then I think a few days ago, they released the video of the man who was beaten to death in Memphis.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah lah, like maybe that's why, I mean, not to justify it, but his focus on the laws. It is true lah that the US, even as an outsider, right, you look at it, you're like, do rules even matter there? Yeah. So
because he brings up
like,
that point lah, right, that even though the death penalty exists in certain states in the US, you know, as a criminal and knowing your rights and your civil liberties and everything, it's a very, very long process for the death penalty to actually be executed on the criminal, right? Like they have to go through multiple levels of appeal, multiple levels of you know, you basically run through the court system, whereas in Singapore it's a much more it's a much faster process, for better or worse. It takes place a lot faster. So he's saying that the deterrence that is meant because death penalty is meant to be a deterrence ultimately. So he's saying that the deterrence doesn't work in the US case versus Singapore's case lah. Which, you know, I mean, okay, fair point, but you know, the argument of whether it's still a useful deterrence is I think there's still a lot of literature talking about it, right? Debating about it.
Yeah. And I think because he touched on the death penalty, which in itself in Singapore is a very polarizing topic. We have had podcasts before where we talk about death penalty for drug traffickers and it's not that clear cut because one thing that is obvious is the people who traffic drugs are not necessarily the people who control the movement of drugs. Right? But I mean, on that note, Kirsten Han, who is the Singapore activist, she also chimed in on Twitter, just pointing out that, of course we can have nice things because a lot of migrant workers are exploited. And that set off the discussion in a whole different path on its own thread with a debate there. So, I don't know, the whole thing, I look at it, I'm like, how, I mean, if anything, Matt Walsh has gained a lot of new subscribers from Singapore.
Yeah, especially from Singapore.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially from Singapore. Or maybe countries that support Singapore. It just feels like then this whole him sharing, it just feels like it's just another one of those arguments where it's not so much about the topic being discussed, it's about the high level view that you're taking.